Hey guys, Pat here. I'm going to do a review of Baby Driver, the newest film from Edgar Wright. One of my favorite directors right now. I think a real auteur. Um, not everyone likes Edgar Wright. That's been something I've had to deal with for a few years because I thought early on I thought everyone loved Edgar Wright when I saw Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. I thought everyone was just on the bandwagon, but a lot of people made some good points to me that he's not exactly the best storyteller. He uses editing, quick cutting to overcome a lot of his flaws as a storyteller. He has pacing issues with his movies. He's not very good at writing female characters or romance. And you might say, oh, what about Scott Pilgrim? But he adapted that from a comic, and that comic had really well defined female characters and a romance. So he just adapted that. If you look at Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, World's End, and even now Baby Driver, Wright does show a weakness that his female characters are just less interesting. Like in Shaun of the Dead, it's the male friendship, and Hot Fuzz it is. At World's End, it's the group bonding. There's females in those movies, and they're not bad. They're not like they don't ruin the movie, but they're just kind of there. And with this movie, before I really get into the review, unfortunately, I will say this made it very apparent to me a couple things that Edgar Wright is weak when it comes to writing romance and female characters. It's not his strength. It's just not what he's best at. I don't think he's bad, but his strengths are much better at like male films, making films from a male point of view, being about guys, guy things, nerd things. It just that's him at his best usually. And I don't know why he just shows the strength for that. It may just be that's how he plays it when he's filming. That's what works for him. Because to me, the weakest element of Baby Driver is the romance and the girl in this movie, who isn't bad. She's actually pretty good in the movie, and she's very cute and looks great on camera. It's just the writing of her character. There's all these side characters that are really unique and quirky and funny, and she just doesn't have the same thing that they have, and it's just not as compelling as those characters you want to go back to, the criminal. So I think that's a little jarring, and I think Edgar Wright needs to address this issue or ignore it in his next film. He seems to really not be able to have the ability to do this kind of thing. But I give him credit for trying to mature and do it, like he tried to mature with that World's End. I didn't like the epilogue or the final scene of At World's End. I thought that was a terrible thing he put at the very end. It kind of undermined the whole movie, but that movie is great. I love At World's End. I'm not with people who think it's a weak entry in that trilogy. I think it's a great film, and it was one of my favorite movies that year. It was like top five. So here's the thing with Wright, though, the pacing issues, too. Outside of Shaun of the Dead, which I think is perfect pacing, it's like 90 something minutes. Movie moves great. His other films, including Hot Fuzz, one of my favorite movies of all time, it's 2 hours and you feel it. Scott Pilgrim's first act takes a while to get going. And this movie, it doesn't have pacing issues. It really doesn't. Like, I was never bored. I watched this movie for 2 hours and it never once did I, think about, oh, how long is this on? And I've heard some people say the second act really drags, and I didn't feel that way. But I definitely get people's issues with this movie. It gets messy in the second act. And then it gets really messy. There's a lot of plot holes to Baby Driver. There's a lot of inconsistencies. There's a lot of leaps you have to take with the movie to go with things logically, especially in the third act. Having said all that, though, right? That sounds like a lot of negatives. Like, oh, this movie's messy. I don't like the romance and all that stuff. Those are very, like, small things to what the core of this movie is. Because if you don't know, they maybe didn't get this across in the trailers or in the marketing. This is based off a music video that Edgar Wright did years ago that he kind of had the idea for, where the guy's listening to his iPod and music while they do these getaway chases or these heists. So you don't really even see the heist. The movie starts, and it's a lot like that music video, and it's Ansel Elgort in a car listening to music, waiting for guys to come out of a robbery, and then he escapes from the police. And I'm just sitting there the whole time, my mouth, I'm like, oh man, Grand Theft Auto. It's so GTA, it's hilarious. I mean, he's getting chased by like dozens of cops, and he does all this crazy shit. Amazing opening sequence, and it kind of sets the pace. It's that Another Day of Sun moment from La La Land. You realize this is the kind of movie it is. It's a musical. It's very much a musical, and music's everything's timed to the music. The sound effects, the editing. There's a scene early on where Baby's walking through the city streets, and it's all one shot, and everything he does is synced up to the music he's listening to. The whole movie's that way. That goes on the whole movie. Like, so those things work amazing. Like the cinematography is probably the best Edgar Wright's ever had in his career. The photography by Bill Pope is you won't even realize how good the photography is because it's so subtle and how brilliant it is. You won't even it's beautifully lit and framed while doing these really complex shots. The editing, this film had two editors. This is probably going to be Edgar Wright's first film to get some Oscar nominations. I don't see how this doesn't get a Best Editing nomination and a Best Sound Mixing nomination. This is definitely like some Mad Max Fury Road shit when it comes to editing. Like, as someone who loves editing and seeing good editing in movies, and I'm so mad that so many films today don't have decent editing. They're very sloppy, like a Suicide Squad. This was miraculous. I mean, to see, like, Baby tapping on the car and it syncs up with the music, and then the windshield wipers sync up with the music. And, I mean, it's so great to see editors and a filmmaker actually know what the fuck they're doing. I mean, it really is. It's the spectacle of this movie is a pure technical achievement from an editing, framing, timing standpoint because you realize they have to time every little thing right to get this to work. So it's very precise. There's not a lot of room to screw up. So it makes all this stuff about the movie that doesn't totally work, like the messy third act or some of the plot contrivances or it being a rather slight movie. It reminded me very much of a Tarantino knockoff in the 90s, like Go, which I love Go, but it reminded me of those movies, which is a compliment, I think. It kind of reminded me of films like The Guest, that and Wingard film that came out of, like those kind of homage films in a sense. You could see the homages Edgar Wright has here. There's definitely like The Driver and movies from the 70s, and he said Walter Hill was an influence, and you can tell. He's kind of making like his Warriors-esque universe film, because he built his own little mini world here. So then it abides by the rules that Wright sets. So that's fine. I can overcome a lot of the issues I have with this movie on paper, because how they're executed in the overarching effect of the movie doesn't really matter. Because it's always entertaining. And even if that second act isn't as good as the first act or the third act, and the first act in particular, the first half hour, 40 minutes, I think just like a 10. I think it's Edgar Wright's best movie. That first 30 minutes is it's so adrenaline rush. It's so insane. I mean, there's moments you're just like, oh, and it's funny while it's being intense. It's scary at the same time. It's very Tarantino, and I didn't know Edgar Wright could do this. He has like a Tarantino-esque touch here, and I'm not talking new. I'm talking like Jackie Brown, Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. There's moments in this movie at its best where Edgar Wright shows the ability to be a really good crime filmmaker or an action director and do really intense, scary situations. That brings me to another problem, though. Jamie Foxx. Not bad in this movie, but I think insanely miscast. I think they were going for a Joe Pesci Goodfellas thing, where, he's just so crazy and unhinged, but I didn't buy it, and I don't think he was physically intimidating. Unfortunately, I don't hate Jamie Foxx in this, but I don't think he was great, and I think they could have cast another actor that would have elevated this role to a whole other place. And I just feel like it was miscasting. He just didn't play that part right for me. I think it's funny. John Barathol shows up early on, Shane from Walking Dead and The Punisher, and he's terrific in the first 5 minutes. And I kept thinking, man, I would have much preferred if he had played Jamie Foxx's role in this movie, because he's just to me, he nailed it more. He was more intimidating. His timing, the way he played off him. Because they basically do the same thing. They basically both fuck with Baby. Because if you don't know the story, Baby's a getaway driver, and when he was a kid, his hearing got damaged. He's got like a ringing in his ears from a car wreck he had with his parents. So he listens to music all the time to ring it out. So he's learned. He's kind of like a super genius physical guy. Like, he does parkour in scenes. He's a master driver. He can read lips, because they actually explain that rather cleverly, because he has to learn to read lips because he lives with a guy who's deaf, so he has to learn sign language and read lips. But he's really good at what he does, and he owes Kevin Spacey's character a lot of money, and he's been in debt to him for a long time. So he's doing all these. He's his getaway driver, and the first part of this movie is like these crews getting together in like a Reservoir Dogs way, these guys talking shit, and Baby going on these drives. I think this part of the movie is awesome. And that's why I say it's a very male film. There is a great female side character in there with John Hamm, and I do like her. But it's the scenes with John Hamm and Baby and Kevin Spacey and that stuff that are the meat of this, the best parts of this movie. It's like, oh man. I mean, like, I can't tell you. I mean, I laughed out loud. It's great. It's the same stuff that I loved about Edgar Wright with Hot Fuzz and all that. I laughed out loud. It was intense. It's very unique. It's quirky. It's idiosyncratic. It's everything you want from an Edgar Wright movie. I feel like he got older here and he was trying to make a more mature film. Like he said, hey, I want to make a slower film. I don't want to do just a quick chase movie. My problem is I don't know why he picked this film, a car chase movie, to be his mature film where he does like the artistic cutaways and stuff. He tries to do art house stuff here. And some critics have loved this. This movie's Edgar Wright's most acclaimed film. It's got like 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's making money. It's Edgar Wright's first successful movie, especially in the States. It's doing really well. So a lot of people went completely with this, and I get that because when you're watching the film, you kind of get sucked up in the operatic nature of it. But I have to say, those things aren't seamless. Whenever he cuts to the things with the parents or the fantasies Baby has, they're good, but it's just not that extra layer of depth that you would hope. Like, you want that next layer of emotional depth. There's not an emotional depth to this movie. It is very vapid, and that's almost kind of the point. There's a commentary on our obsessive nature with money and crime and violence. But I still think if Edgar Wright would have kept that pace up from the first 40 minutes and focused on this crime aspect and kept doing that where he goes on these missions and those interactions, I think this movie would have been amazing. I think it would have been like my favorite movie of the year by far and Edgar Wright's best movie because that stuff is so good. But at the end of the day, this movie's basically like an extended music video with an okay crime film in it. But once again, having said all that, I still love the shit out of Baby Driver. You can't keep a good baby down. You can't put Baby in the corner. The movie could make so many mistakes. It could make 10 more and it would still be a great movie. Because Edgar Wright just nailed it from a filmmaking standpoint. This is his best made film, by far. This is everything he's shown technically before and stuff like Scott Pilgrim. It has all the quick editing and ability that he showed with his trilogy, but now he's taken it to a whole other level. I mean, this puts him in the high level. I mean, this is Scorsese, Tarantino, and I mean, this is stuff where I think he's opening up a whole new door for him as a filmmaker that I didn't think possible. If he gets the right script, if somebody gives him the right screenplay, or he works on the right screenplay with somebody, because this is like his first film, I think, to write by himself, or not be adept. So that does make a bit of a difference. But if he gets the right script, he has an amazing movie in him. I mean, it really reminds like, wow, Edgar Wright has a truly great film in him, not just like a great comedy film. Which I didn't know he had that ability. This really opened my eyes up to Edgar Wright in new ways. And that's what's exciting about it. Baby Driver is a very exciting film because it's a filmmaker you see kind of going to another level now as a craftsman. For a film that costs like $35 million, it's got the best car chases I've seen in the last decade. It's got some of the best editing, timing, sequences, syncing up of audio and dialogue that I've seen in years. It's one of the best put together films I've seen in a long time. And it's got one of the best soundtracks I've heard in a while. It reinvents the sound. It reinvents music you've heard before. It has some jokes I think are terrific. There's at least 4 or 5 jokes. It's not as consistently funny as his other movies, but there's about 5. There's a handful of jokes that are really good. It's very gory, like Hot Fuzz gory, but intense gore. Like he doesn't play it for laughs. It's very gory, very surprising. I love the violence in this. It has awesome death scenes. Like I legit screamed out in the theater at one point, "Fuck yeah!" from one of the death scenes because it was so badass, and I wanted that character to die so much. I think Ansel Elgort's great in this. I loved him in The Fault in Our Stars. I don't like that movie, but I thought he was really good in it. I think he's great here. He's got this weird accent. They're in Atlanta. So they're doing like this southern, my name's Baby. But his physical acting is awesome. His physical acting is just intense. It's like a ballet. And that's the thing that you got to give this movie at the end of the day. It is a demo reel, basically, for Edgar Wright to show off. It's basically director showing off. I mean, there's even a sequence where he's making a sandwich and Edgar Wright showing off. And I thought he showed off a bit with Scott Pilgrim. But this isn't as much CG and special effects technical wizardry. This is like in camera shit. Like everything Edgar Wright's doing here is very physical and palpable and real and raw. And that makes it feel older. It doesn't feel like a modern movie. It feels like an old school movie because everything's in camera. As far as I could tell, it didn't seem like it had any CG or anything like that. It was kind of nuts. So when there is a car chase, when there is a shootout, it's so intense. Even if you're not totally emotionally invested, it's just so intense because it's so physical. It's a very physical film. It's a mechanical film about cars and guys wanting to run away with girls in their cars and romance and love and double crossing and noir. It's all these different things mixed together. So it is kind, like I said, it's kind of a mess, but it's a mess in the best way. He has all these different cassettes and he does remixes of stuff. And that's why I kind of feel like Edgar Wright keeps remixing the movie. So the movie it's like a mixtape. It has just all these different parts to it. And there's, tracks that are better than other ones. But as an album, as a collection of tracks, it's awesome. And that's how I try to see this movie. It's just as an album in a lot of ways. And it totally works. You could just have it on in the background and watch it and just admire it. And be in awe of it from a technical standpoint. And having said that, I still really did like the characters. I think Jon Hamm's amazing in this. Probably my favorite part of the movie. Jon Hamm, thank God he's in the second half so much. He carries so much of the heavy lifting that people won't realize because Jon Hamm's that good. Kevin Spacey has some of the best dialogue in the movie. Really, outside of Jamie Foxx and the girl, I thought everyone else, the side characters, were all terrific. Very memorable. There's that scene you see in the trailer with the Mike Myers mask. That's really funny. All that stuff, great. I think the foot chase at the end with oh my god, there's a foot chase in the third act or the start of third act that's awesome. It reminded me of Point Break, the old Point Break, Catherine Bigelow stuff. And that's what I'm saying. Edgar Wright showing that kind of skill here, like Catherine Bigelow or something. Like, oh, this dude can do action, like straight up. And I know Hot Fuzz he showed that, but like this is holy shit. I mean, I'm so blown away by this and so impressed by Edgar Wright. And even all the flaws this movie has, and people have pointed them out to me, and maybe flaws he's going to show in his career consistently, they don't hold this down because it's so fucking exhilarating. It's exhilarating to watch this movie in the theater. I saw it on a big screen. It was really loud, and the sound effects are incredible. This should get some Oscar noms for sound. Like I said, the editing. It keeps everything going, and Edgar Wright directs it so well. It's so well directed that even the stuff that I don't love about it or I think doesn't totally work as a whole, it all works within the movie because he knows how to make it work. He knows how to put a movie together. It's so well done. I mean, that's the thing. It's so well done. It's something like a Michel Gondry would make or a Spike Jonze, where you go, oh, those guys are just so good. They can make anything kind of work. That's how it is here. It's Edgar Wright showing once again how talented he is. And it makes me excited for his next film. That's the thing. I think his next film's going to be better. This isn't my favorite Edgar Wright film. That's probably Hot Fuzz. But I'm not like everyone else where I think this is automatically his worst. Well, I'm not everyone else, but I'm not like a lot of people where they think this is his weakest film, like Ralph the Movie Maker said that and some other people. I think this is right on par with like At World's End or Scott Pilgrim has a lot of issues too people ignore sometimes, and I really like Scott Pilgrim. I love it actually, but I think it's on par with those movies in a lot of ways, and the benefits it has are just as good as the benefits those movies have. I just think it was a pacing thing. Probably if he cut 10 minutes out of this movie, reworked the romance a little bit, and honestly focused more on the crime aspects and didn't skip over those details, I think this movie would have just been perfect. I would have had no issues with it. I'm only talking about the negative things because I don't want to sit here and just praise the movie blindly for all these, like, oh man, that was a cool action scene. That was a great moment. Because that's what it is. It's just a bunch of cool action scenes and cool moments, and that'd be a really boring review. It'd be just praising technical stuff. And that'd be a shallow way to look at it. I'm not trying to give this movie a pass. It's just all the other stuff's kind of generic. You've seen it before. But it's the way the movie's made that you've never seen this stuff before. So it's original in a lot of ways. You've never really seen a movie use music this way before. You've never seen action scenes use music this way before entirely. And it's so impressive that it does really leave a mark. It impacts you. Like, I wanted to see it again. and I wanted to see it. I would watch this movie a few times, so that's a testament to it. Where some other Edgar Wright film might be like a 9 or a 9.5 to me, like Hot Fuzz, because I just love it so much as a comedy and I love the characters. I don't have that emotional investment here. I really like Baby, and I like at the end. I kind of figured out that I think he actually likes the girl because it reminds him of his mother. And I think back on the movie, and there's a lot of details I really like about it that I kind of missed. That's why I needed some time to think about it. It's like, oh, that was actually really clever because there's a lot of things you have to pay attention to, and it fleshes out a lot of those things, and it makes it work as it really does. It brings the whole movie together because Wright did think a lot of this stuff out, at least enough to make it work. As it seems like he wanted more to make this movie from the idea of what he wanted to do, less than he had a story he wanted to tell. He wanted to make a movie like this. But like I said, those other films, I may love them more, but I still think this is like an 8, 8.5 out of 10. It's still a 8.5, really. It's still a great movie. It's the most entertaining movie I've seen so far this year. Maybe Lego Batman is right there with it, but it moves like that. It's so fast, it's so funny. It's quirky, it's interesting, it's just a badass movie. It's balls to the wall. Like the male part of this film, the testosterone, the male nature of it, that stuff. Man, I'm a dick. I could watch 3 hours of that movie. Like the guys talking shit to each other. That first 5 minutes, and whenever Baby gets an intense confrontation or there's a moment of real tension. Like there's a moment, I won't really spoil, but Baby looks at someone and he like nods his head like, no, don't do that. It's amazing. I mean, there's so many sequences like that are so intense, edge of your seat. And it just, the movie, every time it kind of starts to lose focus, it brings you back with this amazing sequence. And there's one amazing sequence after another like that. So I think with time, I'm just going to like the movie more. I think I need to see it a couple more times to really enjoy that. And I probably won't love the things I don't love about it now, but the things that are good about it are so good. And I have no problem with some people thinking this is Edgar Wright's best movie. Because in a lot of ways it is. In a lot of ways it's his best achieved film on a technical level. Like you could tell he probably executed this film exactly like he wanted to. In a lot of ways it deserves that credit, especially for the budget he had and how ambitious it is, and it makes you wonder what he would have done if he had like 50, 60 million. He directs the actors so well, he knows how to do that. It doesn't quite have as much, it's not as dense as some of his other scripts and other films with jokes and stuff like that. It's a little bit more looser with it. But I like that about it. I think that's what makes it cool. It's a cool movie. It makes you want to go out and put sunglasses on and drive really fast or like run or something. Like it pumped me up. And that's the point, which means it totally works in what it set out to do. It's a fun romp. It doesn't take itself seriously. It doesn't expect you to take it that seriously. And if it's having so much fun, it's hard for you not to get into it. And it's just got so many great set pieces. Like even the final little car battle is just awesome, and it's just like I was just enjoying every moment. I mean, like legit, all those scenes I could watch a half hour of them. They're so good. So that just has to. There's classic action here, and that elevates it to a whole other level that you can't ignore. And that's why people are going to see it, and that's why people are paying attention. That's why critics are paying attention to it. It's impressive. I mean, I know I'm overusing that word, but it is. But it's not my favorite Edgar Wright film. But do I think it's his worst film? I don't know. It's probably somewhere in the middle or somewhere at the lower end. But it's still great. And this is like his fifth movie now. So he's made 5 movies I like. So he's 5 for 5. So how many guys have that 5 movies in a row that I think are all really fucking good? I don't have one film in that list I wouldn't watch again or I wouldn't own on Blu-ray. So at the end of the day, Baby Driver's like a complete success because it's a commercial success. It's going to open up new doors for Wright. It bounces him back from the Ant-Man thing. It's his most acclaimed film. It's going to open up new doors for him. And it's wonderful that it's kind of this art house summer movie at the same time. He basically put a YA crime film meets this really intense action thriller. And the thriller elements are actually the best part of it, which is weird. The thriller elements are like the standout things. But it's just ice cream. It's just, there's so much sweetness here. You'll get a brain freeze from it. It's overwhelming. I can't really process it all. There's a lot of details I think I missed, but there's a lot of things. It's the irreverence of a lot of this that really works, and Edgar Wright's always great with that. But just to summarize, love the cast outside of Jamie Foxx, really. I just think it was miscasting. I think the dialogue is pretty damn great. Awesome dialogue. There's so many lines that I'm thinking about in my head, actually. It's like, that was a really good line. The photography is going to be underrated. Bill Pope's photography is terrific. The editing is the best editing I've seen in a long time. Kingsman has to step up its game with this stuff now. Edgar Wright threw the gauntlet down to Matthew Vaughn on this stuff because I thought Kingsman had some of the best editing of action sequences I've seen in a while, and then it's like, oh damn, Edgar Wright's really, for the budget he had, he's really kicking ass for in camera action, and beautiful movie, well done, efficient. And it feels like that was the intention. Baby's an efficient, to the point guy, so the movie's kind of made in the sense of how Baby is as a character, which I can go with because all of Edgar Wright's movies kind of give you from the point of view of the character. So it's just who Baby is. Baby's not the most compelling lead from an Edgar Wright movie. He's not a perfect character, but he's good enough, and the movie itself is awesome. It really is, and it did remind me of a bunch of movies I love. Maybe not as great as some of those movies, but the fact that it took me back to that time, it felt like a movie that would have come out in 1999 more so than now. And it shows that Edgar Wright can go old school and reinvent the wheel. It shows he's not a one-trick pony, he's not a hack. It shows he's not like losing it or anything like that. If anyone was worried about what was going on with him, no, he's great. He's consistently making great movies. He's one of those directors out there to watch. He's one of the great directors in the world right now. And I think people who don't like Edgar Wright movies might actually like this movie more. And people who are hardcore fans of Edgar Wright will love this a little bit less. Because it's a very different Edgar Wright movie. It's not like his typical film. You're going to be surprised how different this is. If it almost like if you didn't, it's him, but it doesn't totally feel like him entirely. Like it could have been a different director, and I wouldn't have been completely shocked. But it made me just wish he had made Ant-Man, because a lot of my issues with Ant-Man, I'm like, God, he would have fucking just how he would have directed some of the sequences. But good movie. Probably gonna end up on my top 10 list at the end of the year. It's probably not going to be like number one. I'm sure I'm going to like some movie better this year, but it's still going to probably end up being in the top 10. Highly recommend go see it. Go see it in the theater. I don't know if it'll work as well at home. It's really a theater movie. I'd say go see it at the biggest screen you can with the biggest speaker you can. And if you're a fan of action, if you like movies like Bullet, if you like Steve McQueen movies, if you're kind of a gearhead, you like cars and you like fast, you like action and chasing and all that and grit, then this movie's right. It's right up your alley. It's awesome. It totally fits within that genre, and I know I said a lot of negative things, but that's really because the things that are great about it, they're just hard to articulate because there are a lot of just filmmaking things. They're not story elements or character-based things. But that's not to knock the movie. You just have to see it to get what I'm talking about. It's like a musical. When you go see a Broadway musical, sometimes the books aren't the best part, the book of the musical, but the music and the actors and the dancing and all that and the sets, that's the experience, and that's what makes it, and that's how this movie is. The sets, if you will, the acting, the choreography, that's the stuff that's the meat of Baby Driver, and that's the stuff that you come out revved about, that you think about and you want to go back and see again, and you want to get a Blu-ray and go like, how did he do this? And you want to see the behind the scenes on this. So, I guess if I had to give an arbitrary rating, which I don't like doing, I don't like ratings, I guess it's like an 8.5 if I was doing a number. If I'm doing like, I guess B+, if I was doing the letter grade scale, but yeah, B+. Maybe an A-, but a B+, A-, and then like an 8.5 out of 10. So, I definitely think it's great. It's just I think this movie could have been a 10 and easily been Edgar Wright's best movie if he would have just made some certain decisions, if he would have just reworked certain elements of this and added more of some characters and less of others. I think this could have been like easily a 10, like a movie that I'm obsessed with, like a masterpiece. Like I think this had the potential to be a masterpiece. There's elements of a masterpiece here though, and that's worth noting. Of course, from any filmmaker, because we're not going to see that in your typical Hollywood blockbuster. So, go see Baby Driver. Definitely go see it. Pick up the soundtrack. Be surprised. There's some deep cuts with songs in here. It's really cool. And, I think Ansel Elgort's going to become a big star. I actually wanted him to play Han Solo in the Han Solo movie, because I think he looks a little bit like Harrison Ford. But, I think this is going to kick off a new career for him in a different way. He's not just going to be in these romantic films. He's going to actually become an action star. He actually has the chops. And I think Edgar Wright's going to open up new doors, and I hope he gets any movie he wants to make now in Hollywood, because this is successful. So please go see it just to support original films like this and auteurs like Edgar Wright, just the same way I'd say go see a Wes Anderson movie. But thank you for listening. Tell me your opinion in the comment section on Baby Driver. What did you think about it? Have you seen it yet? What's your favorite Edgar Wright movie? And I don't know. Just thanks for watching. It's awesome that people like to hear me bullshit about movies for a half hour.